Hannah Kaplan, and this is the WCS Wild Audio Podcast, where you'll find reported audio stories covering the latest news and newsmakers from the Wildlife Conservation Society's Global Conservation Program, Zoos and Aquarium, and their many partners. We've got a great show today, so let's get to it. Bright red scarlet macaws are among the world's largest parrot species. In Guatemala, protecting them from habitat destruction and poaching for the pet trade is a major challenge. The WCS team there has taken an interesting approach. WCS Wild Audio's Dan Rosen has the story.
There are 5 great intact forests between Mexico and Colombia. Together they house 7.5% of the world's biodiversity. 5 million people depend on them. But illegal cattle ranching by outside groups is a major threat. A few years ago, WCS's Jeremy Radachowsky was hiking in the 5 great forests and came upon some of this deforestation firsthand.
Just look at this, it's sickening. Everything is cattle pasture. Trees gone. Everything's just cut right to the ground. The funny thing is there's not even any cattle here. It's just a big wide open field with tree trunks. There used to be a forest. It's just really, really depressing.
Jeremy and WCS are heavily involved in trying to combat this threat to the 5 great forests. One of the forests is the Selva Maya, which touches Belize, Mexico, and Guatemala. At its heart is the Maya Biosphere Reserve, which is where WCS Guatemala has been working for over 2 decades. Their aim is to help conserve the reserve's cultural sites and its natural resources, which are critical to the lives and livelihoods of the local people, and to protect its wildlife.
This piece of forest is home of scarlet macaws, jaguars, tapirs, Central American river turtles that are really endangered species in the region. So we are talking about a very important place where these species can survive.
That's Gabriela Ponce Santizo, WCS Guatemala's country director, for an episode in Season 1 of WCS Wild Audio. Protecting the bright, beautiful scarlet macaws is not easy. In addition to habitat loss, poaching of macaws for the illegal pet trade is a major threat in the reserve. One of the approaches taken by WCS Guatemala is to hand-raise low-weight chicks. In the wild, these chicks typically don't survive, but to boost the population, the team removes the chicks from the nests and raises them in a remote field lab. It takes months until the birds are ready to fly off on their own. It's not easy work.
We are working in a dangerous place. It's distant and difficult site to reach and not well communicated.
That's Rony Garcia, who is WCS Guatemala's science director. He and his team have to maintain a constant presence at the remote lab, where they're far from civilization.
We are using solar energy to run all the activities in the field laboratory, including the incubator and brooder. Sometimes it does not work very well, and we need to depend on the gasoline generator as an energy backup, and maintain enough gasoline there is very difficult.
But their hard work is paying off. Every year now, dozens of birds in the lab reach the age where they're ready to be released. In the wild, this would be a dangerous time for the chicks.
The more difficult part of the chicks is when they jump from the nest in the wild, because they don't have all the abilities to fly, and sometimes they are predated by wild cats.
The hand-raised chicks, on the other hand, have already learned to fly in a protected environment. When their flight cage is opened, they flap confidently off into the forest. This has proven a boost to the population. 20 years ago, the nests WCS Guatemala monitored produced an average of 0.7 birds per nesting season. Now, Rony says that number's hovering close to 2 birds on average. Long-term success will depend on a number of factors outside the laboratory, but it's a good start. For WCS Wild Audio, I'm Dan Rosen.
Today's episode was produced and reported by Dan Rosen, with help from Hannah Kaplan and Nat Moss. The WCS Wild Audio Podcast is a production of the Wildlife Conservation Society. Please join us next week for a new episode, and don't forget to rate or review the show wherever you get your podcasts.